ACS Laboratory, and I'm going to talk about we're the largest cannabis and hemp testing laboratory in the eastern half of the United States. We test for hemp from 44 different states currently. So that's 44 different states that send product to our laboratory in Tampa, just south of Tampa. And we have been doing this for quite some time and feel that we're pretty good experts at it. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of the slide presentation on 5 steps to be able to be hemp compliant with doing some strategic testing. Biggest thing that we have to do is that when you're looking at a farm is to be strategic about your lot design. It's very, very important to be strategic about the lot design. The second step is to test with a USDA compliant laboratory who's DEA licensed, because DEA licensed is a requirement. And follow a strategic testing timeline so you know where you're going along on the timeline. Monitor your THC potency throughout the harvest and then publish your results. So we'll take them one at a time so that we can go through them. The most important is to be very strategic about your lot design. You can have one strain per lot, but you can have multiple lots per strain. So a lot stands on its own. If you're a commercial grower, then there's going to be 4 samples that are going to be clipped from that lot in dispersed area. If you're part of the pilot program, there's going to be 5 samples that are going to be clipped. We homogenize them all together and then test them. But if the lot tests hot, then if one sample tests hot, then the entire lot is going to end up having to be destroyed, which is a real difficult circumstance. So you want to be very strategic with your lot design. You don't want to make your lots too big. You want to make them small enough so that if you have, for some reason, a sample that is tested hot, you don't want to have to destroy all of your lot. You want to be able to destroy only a small portion of your lot. So the key here is risk mitigation. Risk mitigation is 100% the key. So you need to make sure that that lot size is the proper lot size. As an example, let's say you have 10 acres. You don't want to make 1 acre per lot. Maybe you want to make it smaller than an acre per lot. You want to do it by strain so that you have the ability to be able to segregate it and keep your risk down low. It's very important. Next is you want to be able to work with a USDA compliant laboratory. So a USDA compliant laboratory is one that is DEA certified. ACS Laboratory happens to be a USDA's compliant laboratory. In the state of Florida, there are only 2 laboratories that are compliant with the USDA, and they are DEA licensed and certified. There's only 2 laboratories that are designated as designated laboratories by the Florida Department of Agriculture that actually have DEA licenses. So there's only 2 that you can use. ACS Laboratory is one of them. We are ISO 17025 certified. We're CLIA certified, which means that we are a medical grade laboratory. We test at a much higher level, at a much higher grade for doing the testing. Also, we're ACA certified, and there's a compliance test that's done on a national basis for hemp products. And we received the most emerald badges of any laboratory in the United States. So dealing with a laboratory that knows how to test the product, that has a tremendous amount of experience in testing the product, can come out and do the clipping legitimately and take the product and do the testing and send the results is something that's very important. So you need to be able to choose one of those 2 laboratories in the state of Florida. ACS was started in 2008, so we've been around for quite some time. We're the largest laboratory in the eastern half of the United States. We're the largest physical laboratory in the United States, 17,500 square foot. We develop all of our standard operating procedures in-house. All our methods are done and tested in-house. We don't simply use the methods that are provided by manufacturers of equipment like several laboratories around the country do, but the quality of the work that we do is far and above what there is that's available in the marketplace. We exceed the national and state requirements. The interesting thing is that if you want to sell a product throughout the entire United States, you probably need to get it tested in Florida, because Florida's requirements by the Florida Department of Agriculture are the most strict in the entire country. So having it tested here will ensure that you can sell that product throughout the 50 United States. We're Florida's largest designated hemp testing laboratory. A designated hemp testing laboratory is an actual license or contract that was done by the Florida Department of Agriculture, and we are the largest Florida Department of Agriculture designated laboratory. And again, there are only 2 laboratories in the state of Florida that have DEA licenses. And if you have any question about it, ask your laboratory that you're speaking to about their DEA license, because you're gonna need it to be able to do testing with them. So ask them for a copy of it. They have to give it to you. It's a required DEA certificate. You're gonna need it to be able to make sure that you're doing it with a compliant laboratory. We were founded in 2008, the largest in the Eastern USA. Kind of went over this, I'm just gonna do it quickly. We do all of our development in-house. We exceed national and state requirements, and we are Florida's largest designated hemp laboratory, hemp testing laboratory. And again, the Emerald badges are something that allows you to test yourself against standards and other laboratories. No other laboratory gained 21 Emerald badges in 2019. Only ACS Laboratory did, the most of any laboratory. Our group, you could see, this is only about 10% of our laboratory, but we just had a bunch of people standing around the table and show it. We've actually doubled the amount of people that are in the laboratory since this photograph. So we are growing in leaps and bounds. It's very important to be able to make sure that you have a high quality laboratory that is doing your testing. Strategic testing timeline. This is something that's very important to be able to do. So if you could see this slide, before you do your planting, you want to be able to do soil testing and testing for heavy metals. So soil testing is important because if you have a farm that is existing and growing products, you don't really know what's in the soil. So you should test the soil for heavy metals and for pesticides, because hemp is a net accumulator. It will take everything out of the soil and will just suck it right out and bring it into the plant. So you want to be able to know if there is something in the soil ahead of time and testing it for, we recommend testing the soil for pesticides and heavy metals to make sure that it's not present, and that way you won't have an issue when the plant gets stressed. The next thing is 30 days before you're going to harvest, you have to notify the Florida Department of Agriculture of your intent to harvest by sending an email to the DPI hemp at fdax.gov. So you have to notify the state 30 days ahead of your harvest. And then we come and we clip a sample 15 days before your harvest. So I'm jumping a little bit ahead there, but I want to make sure that everybody knows that once you plant the product in the ground, you have to be able to notify the state 30 days ahead of time. And then before the harvest, You want to test for potency, most definitely for cannabinoids, and you want to do microbiology and pesticides as well, which are optional. You don't have to test for them, but you certainly should test for pesticides before the harvest, so at least you know what your expected result is on a compliance test. Then the compliance test comes 15 days before harvest. So when you do your 15 days before harvest, you have to notify us of when that date is. We will come out, we will do the clipping. We have a clipping team, a hemp clipping team. They will come out, they will see the farm, they will determine what the lots are. We take GPS location, latitude and longitude, and then we take the clippings. Again, for a commercial farm, it would be 4 clippings per lot. For a pilot program, it's 5 clippings per lot. And then we will come out and we will do that, and then we send the results. We homogenize them. So we'll take 4 clippings, we mix them all together, and then we perform the testing in the laboratory, and we send the results directly to you and to the Florida Department of Agriculture. If it tests hot, you're going to end up having to destroy that lot. You don't want to have to destroy that lot. So you probably need to do testing along the way before you do your compliance testing, because it's all about stressing the plant. Stressing the plant is what generates THC. THC can be generated from too much water, not enough water, too much sunlight, not enough sunlight, problems with the soil, not enough nutrients, too much nutrients. It's a very delicate balance, and you have to be able to get the balance down, because there are requirements of the 0.3 THC that you have to be under. And in order to hit that 0.3, you want to make sure you have the correct strains, and you want to make sure that you have the plant out of the ground and tested before it reaches those levels of THC. Then once your product is approved and it passes the 0.3 THC, then you have to test after your harvest. So in order to be able to sell the product, you want to be able to test it for potency, pesticides, heavy metals, microbiology. Those are requirements of the Florida Department of Agriculture in order to sell that product. You might want to test it for terpenes also. It's an optional test. And terpenes is something that adds value to your product, depending on the type of terpenes that come out of the product and that you've planted. That's the strategic testing timeline. If anybody needs that strategic testing timeline, we're happy to give it to you. Just contact us directly. You should monitor the THC potency throughout the growth of the product, because again, you don't know when it's going to hit the THC level depending on the stress of the product in the field. And that's very, very important. Total THC is what we're testing, which is delta 9 THC plus THCA times 0.877. It's a formula. It's very important to know that it's a total THC. And we can explain that to you as well. So there's an allowed variance of 0.05%, but you want to make sure that you're not within that variance. You want to make sure that you're pretty much underneath it. And then you need to publish your results. So the certificate of analysis that you get from ACS looks like this one on the screen. You publish your results, and you're going to get potency, pesticides, mycotoxins, heavy metals, and microbiology. Those are the required tests in order to sell the product. In order to harvest the product, is only potency, only potency. So all you have to do is test for the level of THC. The level of cannabinoids that are in the product come as part of the potency test. We test for 11 different cannabinoids. If you want to test for additional cannabinoids, we offer testing for 17 different cannabinoids as well. But 11 is what's required, and we do that testing for you. What is a certificate of analysis? If you look at the top of the screen, it says what a batch number, a sample number. We get all of this data and information. We put it on, we take a picture of the product. We take all the weights. We say that it's passed all these different tests, and it's gone through a significant amount of testing. The amount of testing is enormous. Our laboratory, again, we've got significant amount of equipment, very sophisticated equipment to be able to do the testing. We have more equipment than probably any laboratory in Florida, probably any laboratory in the eastern half of the United States, and more personnel. But we give you the type of testing that you're going to see, which is the CBD total, the THC total, and then we also separate out other cannabinoids like CBG, CBDA, and different types of cannabinoids. But in order to harvest, the only one that's important is THC, and it has to be below 0.3%. As you can see on this example right here, the THC total is 0.05%, which is significantly lower than what's required. And we give you a full COA in order to be able to do the testing. So in order to recap, let's just go through it one more time. Be strategic about your lot design. Very, very important, the lot design. Have risk mitigation. Make sure that you don't risk the entire lot that you're growing. Reduce the size of your lots in order to be able to do risk mitigation for the entire field that you're growing. Test with a USDA compliant laboratory who has a DEA license. Again, in the state of Florida, there are only 2 that have DEA licenses. Ask for a copy of the DEA license. If they don't have it, do not use that laboratory. It'll be a huge mistake on your part because they will not be able to be valid results. Follow the strategic testing timeline. Test the soil ahead of time. Test it for pesticides, heavy metals, to see if possibly it is in the soil from other crops that were grown prior and it might contaminate this product. We're testing for 67 different pesticides. Believe me, if you use the pesticide, it's going to be detected. And there can also be drift that is there as well from other fields. So you want to make sure that you test it to make sure that there's not an issue prior to planting this very valuable and profitable product. And then you want to monitor the THC throughout the harvest. So initially, until you get used to the timing and how it's going to come out in the field, you want to make sure that you test the hemp along the way to see what the measurements are. It's a simple test. You don't have, it's not a compliance test. We don't have to come out and clip the sample for you. You can clip the sample yourself and send it into the laboratory, and we will do the testing for you and let you know where you are along the way on THC. Very important to be able to do that. When the compliance testing comes along, then you call us. We send out our hemp clipping team to come out and do the clipping. We will take the clippings, we'll homogenize them, we do the test, and then we send the results. And then the last, of course, is publish your results. Publish your results to Florida Department of Agriculture, and you can also publish your results to anybody who's interested in potentially buying your product or extracting your product. But prior to selling it, you have to do a more extensive test that is required. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. There's my email address at rbrown@acslabcannabis.com. We have a whole team of people that work with everybody, and we can answer whatever questions you want to ask.
Thank you, Roger. That was great. So there were a few questions that came up in the chat box. So I wanted to make sure you could cover those in a little bit more depth. One of the first questions that came up was, what do you mean by lot? So can you define that a little deeper for this audience?
Yes, a lot is what's designated by the Florida Department of Agriculture as a particular field that is determined to grow a strain. You can grow one strain per lot, but you can grow multiple lots of strains. And a lot is like a plot. You know, they changed the words to match the USDA. So it's really a lot is the same as a plot. So let's just say, again, you have 5 acres. You want to take an acre and you want to divide it up into maybe 2 or 3 lots per acre, or 1 acre lots. Whatever it is, that lot is determined as a particular lot, and we have to take samples from 4 different locations in that lot. And then if that lot tests hot, it has to be destroyed. So be very careful how you choose and designate your lots.
Okay, excellent. That's perfect. Okay, next question is, can you please tell them again about the 2 DEA labs you mentioned earlier? You said there were only 2.
There are only 2. There's ACS is the largest and the biggest laboratory. There's only one other laboratory that has a DEA license in the state of Florida, and it's available on the Florida Department of Agriculture's website. I'm not interested in really promoting a competitor, but there are other people that purport to be able to take samples and be able to do Florida Department of Agriculture testing. If they don't have a DEA license, do not do testing with them. Ask them for a copy of their DEA license. I'm telling you, ask. It's the most important thing. You don't want to be able to test and then have your testing be non-compliant.
Excellent. Okay. All right, next question is, if our preliminary tests are coming up hot, can you help us lower the levels before final testing?
No, I can't. It's actually based on the stress of the plant. So when the plant is stressed, it creates THC as a defense mechanism. So something is stressing the plant. Again, it could be too much water, not enough water. It could be too much nutrients, not enough nutrients. Too much sun, not enough sun. You have to get a delicate balance, and most farmers that are experienced in this know how to be able to get a delicate balance in the crops in the field. And it's important to be able to get that balance. So you don't know what that balance is going to be. So because you don't know what that balance is going to be, you need to test it along the way to see, maybe one side of your field tests hotter than the other side of your field. You have to get some experience with doing the growing of this plant.
Okay, excellent. Can you please specify the range of costs for ACS team to harvest and for test, COA, etc.? And that is from Mark LNB.
The hemp clipping cost is for 1 acre is about $500 and some odd dollars. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but there's a charge to be able to come out to be able to do the clipping, and then we do the clippings, and then we do the testing. So it's a combination of, it's per acre. So let's say 1 acre, 1 lot would be maybe $500 and something dollars, but the second lot is less money. So there's a charge for us to come out to actually do the clipping and do the compliance and do all the work and the paperwork and the GPS coordinates and so forth. The second set of clippings, which is done on the second lot, is just an additional cost. It's not much money.
Okay. Excellent. Do lots have to be designated before any testing begins or just before final?
The lots have to be designated. There's no determination as to how you designate a lot. A lot is 1 strain per lot, but you can have multiple lots of the same strain. So how you designate the lots is not predetermined, no. There's no requirement to predetermine it ahead of time.
Okay. So we had another question about sampling protocol for compliance testing prior to harvest. Is there any further explanation you can give on that?
The sampling protocol is you have to notify the Florida Department of Agriculture 30 days prior to harvest. And then you have to call ACS and have us come out 15 days prior to harvest. And on 15 days prior to harvest, we will clip the samples, we do the test, we send the result to you and to the compliance test to you and to the Florida Department of Agriculture. And then you're able to harvest. You cannot harvest without that test.
Okay, excellent. Another question is there a different process for nurseries? They're growing, but usually don't grow anywhere near close to size, to full size.
Well, there's not any massive hemp growers yet in the state of Florida. People are just starting to plant and starting to get acreage down. So, you know, nurseries are growing today, but again, it's always a good idea to test your soil before you do the your planting.
Okay, excellent. And had a question on method development for THC. So you may be contacted by the FAU research team. So there are a lot of university partners. We're really excited about all of them. So they can
say that again. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Sorry, there are a lot of research partners that are involved, including FIU, FSU, several different Florida research partners. So had a question in the chat about that.
Well, if you're part of the research partners, then you're part of the pilot program. And if you're part of the pilot program, then it's a different set of regulations. So it's the same situation with the plots. The only difference is we have to take 5 samples instead of 4. And we have to follow different protocols with the testing.
Okay, absolutely. And I think each university will be managing this differently for each of the pilot projects. Each
one can be treated differently, but the testing is basically the same.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's see, to follow up specifically, how does your team sample?
We come out, our hemp clipping team comes out, we go into the field, we clip the top. There's a sampling manual that's produced by Florida Department of Agriculture, which tells us exactly how they're telling us to sample it. We clip the top 8 inches of the plant in 4 different locations in the lot, and then we take those, we put it into a paper bag, and then when it's brought back to the lab, we homogenize them all together and grind them all up and test that homogenized sample. So if one section of your lot tests hot and one does not, it's going to affect the type of result that you're going to get because it's all homogenized.
Okay, excellent. All right, next question. Do you offer testing services for clients outside the US who have samples that are predominantly THC producers?
No, because if it's a marijuana product, we're not allowed to test it unless it's in the state of Florida.
Okay. And a lot of people have commented on the great presentation. So thank you so much. Everyone,
thank you.
Excited about the information.
We've been doing this a bit of a time, so we have a lot of experience at it.
Excellent. All right, a couple more questions have come in. So what would be an example of risk mitigation for multiple lots of the same strain? And how would one lot have different conditions from another?
It's really easy, actually. The size of your lot is risk mitigation. Because if you make your lot too big and it tests hot, you have to destroy it. So you want to be able to make your lots smaller. And if you make them smaller, or more reasonable in size, then you're going to be able to ensure that you have some risk mitigation. It's not about how many lots you have, it's about the size of the lots and what you're willing to risk should it test hot.
Okay. Next question is, how large are the sample sizes?
8 inches of a plant times 4. So it's 4 plants. We snip off 8 inches, put them in a paper bag, grind them all up, homogenize them, and test it.
Okay. Excellent. Next question is, what about for people who are growing for personal medical use?
I believe you're not allowed to grow hemp without a hemp license. So you'd have to contact the Florida Department of Agriculture on that. I'm not an attorney and not giving legal advice.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see, what's the cost for testing along the way for THC levels, and how does that process work? I think you covered that earlier. Andrew,
No,
was there?
actually, along the way, it's a bit different. Along the
Okay.
way, for doing R&D testing, prior to doing the compliance testing, it's $68 per test that needs to be done. So if you want to just test for potency, it's $68 along the way, each different test. It's the compliance test that we have to actually physically come out and do the clipping that costs more money.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Are there any other questions from anyone in the audience? Okay. Yep. Another one came through. When you're applying for a permit and you give your GPS and location, is that location considered a lot? Would you be able to put multiple lots under the same application and location?
I'm not sure the answer to that for applications. I just know that when we come and we do a hemp clipping, we take a GPS location for the hemp clipping, and actually we ask the farmers, the growers, to actually take the hemp clipping, take the GPS location ahead of time so that it saves us time in being there. So we can get the GPS location ahead of time, or we could take the GPS location and we denote it on the documentation for where we took the clipping from.
Okay. Got it. For R&D testing, is it the same 8 inches at the top that needs to be clipped and sent in?
You want to make sure that it is, because if your compliance is going to be the top 8 inches, you want to make sure that your R&D testing is the same, so that you're going to be able to be testing apples to apples or oranges to oranges.
Sure. Okay, and your team wanted to make sure you reiterated that only ACS can come out and clip samples of hemp. Only a DEA licensed lab can do it, no one else, or else it's out of compliance. And I think that's a really important point.
Yeah, in order to have compliance testing, I mean, if you could do testing with another laboratory for your prior testing before, or you could do the testing yourself if you have the equipment, you could do that. But you want to have consistency. So the lab that's going to do your compliance testing, you want to have do your testing prior, because you know that the testing is going to be done the same way, in the same manner, in the same function, the same methodology, the same equipment, and so forth. So it's about uniformity. You're better off using the same laboratory, whether it's us or somebody else. Better off, but make sure they have a DEA license.
Very important. Okay. So next question is kind of along those lines. Do you have data on your lab's variability against other labs or against NIST standards?
Not against NIS standards, no, but our lab variability against other labs, and that's what Emerald testing is all about. So it's proficiency testing, to test to make sure that you have the ability to be able to test products that are known standards. So we do Emerald testing, and that's why, and we were awarded 21 Emerald badges last year, the most badges of any laboratory in the country. So nobody achieved 21 emerald badges last year. So our proficiency testing is far and above. Plus, we're also a CLIA licensed laboratory. We're a medical grade laboratory. So the quality of our testing is beyond reproach.
Fabulous. Okay, another question that came in was regarding someone who has a hemp license and owns a nursery. They grow for medical use, but they don't grow on a mass scale. 500 is a large price. Is there a smaller price, or is that just the going rate for all of the final testing?
For the final testing, for compliance testing, that's the going rate. Okay. Yeah, if you're going to test one lot, it's 500 and some odd dollars. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it's $400 just for us to come out, and then there's the clipping and the testing. So it's just $400 to come out to get to the farm to actually physically go and do the testing. It's not an inexpensive endeavor, and if doing compliance testing for a whole lot that somebody's going to make thousands of dollars per pound on, I mean, it's a nebulous number. Laboratory testing is typically about 2% to 2.5% of a budget.
Excellent. And I think that's about on track with other things and other industries as well in terms of percent of budget. Okay, very good. Another question about the testing. Are we sending in, well, just flower or leaves, or the entire 8 inches of the whole plant? And I think to the earlier point, they aren't sending in anything, you guys are sending it in, correct?
Well, there's 2 ways to do the testing. One is prior to compliance testing, the grower can clip the 8 inches off, put it in a bag, and send it to us, and we'll do the testing. That's compliance testing. That's prior to compliance testing. When we have to do the compliance testing, which is 15 days prior to harvest, you've already notified Florida Department of Agriculture 30 days prior to harvest that you're going to harvest. Then 15 days prior to harvest, you have to have the compliance testing done. You cannot select those samples. We have to come out and select those samples. We have an entire hemp clipping team that has all the equipment, all the materials, all the sterilized scissors, gloves, masks, everything that needs to be done to make sure that that sample is not compromised. Put in the bag and then taken back to the laboratory, transported by one of our vehicles back to the laboratory in a cooler to make sure that it's in the same stasis that it was when we clipped the sample.
Okay, excellent. Next question, making sure this protocol doesn't apply to pilot projects. Does this apply to pilot projects for universities?
Yes, it does. Pilot projects have a different set of rules, and we still have to come out and do the clipping, but we have to take 5 clippings from a lot instead of 4. 5 instead of 4.
Okay. And what's your percent error for potency analysis?
Plus or minus 5%.
Next question, any discounts for R&D tests if you want multiple tests on multiple lots at the same farm?
Our pricing is pretty standard, and we ask that if you're a volume customer, we're more than happy to discuss any potential discounts, but our pricings are pretty standard. I mean, we're receiving right now about 1,000 samples a day into our laboratory. So, when people call them and they say, well, I'll send you 5 samples, can you give me a discount? 5 samples is a pretty small amount of business. We're currently receiving about 1,000 samples a day. Okay,
great. And a little more clarification on the top 8 inches of the plant, including flowers, stems, leaves, or what combination?
Whatever the top 8 inches are, that's what we're going to clip. That's what the Florida Department of Agriculture has said we have to clip, and that's what we're going to clip.
Okay. Great questions, guys.
Any other ones?
think we made it to the end. Are there any additional questions? We still have 45 people in the chat box. Okay. All right, so I think we're wrapping up. Again, this is Roger Brown with ACS Laboratory. We will send out a post-event survey, so if you guys can please give us feedback, that will be helpful. That way we understand what content resonated. Next week, we will be doing another webinar. We will be talking about how to read a COA, so we'll go into more depth for that. So make sure you all sign up if you haven't already. Some people are asking if they can email Roger directly for pricing details. I'm sure the answer is yes. His last slide had his contact information. He would probably be delighted to answer that question, but I defer to you, Roger.
Please send me an email, happy to communicate, or just go to our website, acslabcannabis.com, acslabcannabis.com. Just go to the website and you can click start testing, and then just send us some information and we're happy to communicate with you, not a problem.
Excellent, thank you. And a couple more questions have come in. How much is soil testing?
Soil testing is $198. And for $198, we do heavy metals and pesticides. And that's a very particular test to do for soil testing. And I highly encourage those that are growing to do that test before planting.
Okay. And what is the turnaround time for results on any of your testing?
3 to 5 days.
Okay, very good. Do you have a sister lab on the West Coast?
No. ACS is located just south of Tampa. We do not have a sister lab on the West Coast. For hemp, you can ship nationally throughout the whole United States. So we are currently receiving samples from a lot of Western states: California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Colorado. We receive a huge amount of samples from Colorado. There's a reason why clients out in the Western United States send their samples to Florida to ACS Laboratory. There's a reason for it. You know, they have laboratories that are right there in their home states that they can use, but there's a reason why they use us. The reason why they use us is because we're dependable, we're reproducible, and we're the best.
Excellent. Okay, a couple more questions. What's the degradation rate of cannabinoids post-harvest?
Every plant is different. That's the beautiful thing about a natural plant. It's all quite different. But again, we test for 11 different cannabinoids, which is required. But right now we also test for a total of 17 cannabinoids, and we're introducing 18 and 19 within the next week. So there's a lot of different cannabinoids that are being tested for. And certain cannabinoids you can't even test for if you don't have a DEA license. So keep an eye on our website. You'll see that we'll be introducing those additional cannabinoids within the next couple of weeks. But for compliance purposes, only 11 cannabinoids are required. But the degradation of the cannabinoids or the enhancement of those cannabinoids are based upon each individual plant.
Okay. Next question. Why doesn't the USDA require soil testing on all crops for heavy metals?
I don't know the answer to that. They assume that the grower is acting in a responsible manner to produce a responsible product. The USDA currently is really only concerned with the THC levels. In order to sell product out of the state of Florida, you have to be able to test for heavy metals. And testing the soil ahead of time helps so that you don't have any issue with heavy metals getting into your plant prior to planting. So why plant in soil that already has heavy metals in it when you know that hemp is a net accumulator and it will suck those heavy metals right out of the soil? That's why it's a good thing to test the soil. And there are other laboratories that you could test soil with as well. I mean, there's environmental laboratories that you could test. If you don't want to test with us, you could test with somebody else. That's not a problem. But we offer that opportunity.
Okay. All right, a couple more questions. How many replicates do you do per sample?
There are 4 clippings that are done on a commercial sample. So we take 4 clippings, homogenize them all together, and then do that test. We don't take 8 and replicate it, no.
Okay, next question. I think you may have answered this, but do you send a team out for compliance testing on the West Coast?
West Coast of the United States or West Coast of Florida? We only send out a team for compliance testing in Florida because it's required. It may not be required in other states. They simply just send us the product and we test it and give them a certificate of analysis. Florida is an agricultural state, so they want to make sure that somebody is going out and clipping the product.
Okay, great question and point. It only said West Coast, so I don't know if they mean West Coast of the United States or Florida, but hopefully that was covered. Next point was most states don't have to follow our total THC level. Other states seem to have a big advantage over Florida growers.
Everybody's going to be moving towards total THC. Don't kid yourself. It's happening. It's going to happen. Any state that doesn't have total THC are going to move towards it because the USDA is adjusting their requirement from Delta 9 to total THC. It's going to happen. Take it from me. I already have the inside track. It's going to happen.
Okay. Okay, and then just clarification on the West Coast, the intention was the West Coast of the United States.
I don't think that California has a requirement that somebody go out and pick the sample, California, Oregon, or Washington, which are the West Coast. I don't think they have a requirement that somebody goes out and selects the sample, so the grower can actually just take the sample and send it to us. We're receiving samples every day from California, Oregon, and Washington, and Nevada and Colorado. We receive samples all the time.
Okay.
UPS and Federal Express.
Okay, great. We did have another question about corn and soy. Would they be in corn and soy? I'm assuming that means heavy metals.
Corn and soy, we don't have anything to do with corn and soy.
Okay. Joel, was that what your question was?
I think it says, does the USDA want you to test for heavy metals when you grow corn, soy, or other crop? I don't know the answer to that. We're not in the corn, soy, or other crop business. We're in the cannabis business.
Got it. Okay. So he's covered, he just mentioned that metal is in the food chain, which is unfortunate. Okay.
Yep.
All right, very good. Well, time-wise, it's 1 o'clock. We want to be mindful of everyone's time. Excellent questions, guys. Really happy to have everyone aboard. Looking forward to seeing you all next week. And if you have any additional questions, send them to Roger, or you can send them to me at robin.pate@greenpointresearch.com. And we can try to cover them either in the next webinar or the one the following week.
Great. Thank you very much, Robin.
All right. Thank you so much, Roger.
Bye-bye.